2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Public Access America. I always get in here kind of early before Jeffrey just does. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Public Access America. I try and get in here early before Jeffrey does so I can just say some house cleaning because, we have other shows going on. Check out Inspirations Beyond Disabilities on Apple Podcast and Spotify, as well as its new channel on YouTube, and check out some of the conversations that we are having there. It's a pretty great show. We have an episode coming out at midnight Eastern time on Apple Podcasts. So check that out. And Jeffrey is here. That's called timing. That is called timing. And he always has it. But then I worry. Hey, buddy.
What's up?
I always worry that you worry that I'm recording when you step in, like you're just stepping into a landmine and you're not quite sure what it is. But I'm just doing some house cleaning, saying hi everybody, how you doing? We had some shows from Inspirations Beyond Disabilities. We had a conversation about telling your child about their their eye condition. Yes, thank you. Their eye conditions. And then we just had another one. We talked about how TikTok has brought a blind community together, which is really kind of interesting for just a crappy app. So we all just talked about how there's a community there and how much we hate the app but love the community. And then I don't know if you got to notice this, but we had Jay from Inspirations Beyond Disabilities on a special episode last Wednesday, and he talked about his community and some of the issues. And I wanted to talk with you about that in the second hour. But I wanted to say hi. How are you doing today?
Oh, it's a fabulous day. It's sunny. I'm enjoying the fact that there's a little bit of quiet in the house. I officially went on vacation Friday evening after work, so I'm off for a whole 10 days.
Wow.
Feels lovely.
Wow.
But I am notorious for my working vacations, so I'm probably just gonna end up working on a bunch of stuff.
Of course. That's where your mind goes, right? Like, I think people are in a constant battle of where their mind is trying to go and where they want it to go. And sometimes what I say is you just have to go with the flow and do what's on your mind, So.
Yeah, no, but that didn't stop me yesterday from being like, you know what, it's nap time, and I just went and crashed out for 3 hours, and I loved every second of it.
Oh, everybody deserves a nap, Jeffrey. Everybody.
See, but everybody, like, I don't know how everybody else naps, but for me, like, a nap is a 3 hour commitment. It always has been. Like, I'm not one of those people that can like crash out for 20 minutes and then wake up and I'm like, yeah, we're good to go. No, we're going down like for a mini coma, and you're not doing anything to wake me up.
It's so strange because right after your nap, you're still in this fog. I'm in this fog for like a half an hour where I'm really hungry, but kind of drowsy and don't want to do anything. I just want to go back to bed, but I know I have to do stuff. But it's almost like a little buzz, you know what I mean? Until I finally wake up.
Oh yeah.
Shoot. So I'm interested in something because man, I want to get your opinion on something that's really crucial to this show specifically, and that is, who do you think is going to have a better winning record, the Seahawks or the Bears?
Ooh.
I know, threw you off, right?
Well, considering I'm not a fan of either team.
I know. I'm committed to the Bears, but that doesn't mean I'm necessarily a fan. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I would pick the Seahawks simply because they've done some really great depth work for their roster, but I mean, it's kind of been one of those things where they continuously shoot themselves in the foot. So
wait, you talking about the Bears or the Seahawks?
Yes.
Yes.
As a Giants fan, we shoot ourselves in both feet just to be sure.
I turned on the TV and I was like, why is Andy Dalton in a Bears uniform? Ah, shit.
Well, that's the worst part is because they've got a rookie quarterback that looks to be pretty damn good.
Right.
And this is where it's always a little tough because like you get a good rookie and if you throw them in right away, there's a lot of times that, they might have some heat initially, but they just get fucking beat up.
Yeah.
Great examples of that are like Jameis Winston and even Cam Newton, but
Mm-hmm.
at least Cam Newton made an appearance at a Super Bowl. So
Right,
there's
right.
that, even though he got
Yeah.
his ass.
Robert Griffin. There's just a whole bunch of
Robert
guys that just
Griffin,
you threw them in and they went down, you know?
Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck was amazing,
Yeah.
but he just couldn't cut it. And at 29, when he decided that he was done, he
Mm-hmm.
just walked off, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, good job.
Yeah. I literally saw a lot of players do that, walk away after they got their fourth year, filled their commitment, and were like, I got my money. I don't want to do this, you know?
Well, and like Andrew Luck said, like I want to be able to walk under the power of my own 2 feet and under my own mental cognition. So I'm
Yeah.
done.
Right. I mean, it is just a game as much as other people put their lives involvement in it. It is just a game and you got to respect the guys for playing it. I don't, there's certain people in the league that want to hurt other people. They don't see it as a game. They see it as their mission. And I think
Hmm.
that's an issue. I mean, in preseason, you're not trying to level out their fucking star quarterback, you know? So, and I haven't really seen that yet, but I hope it turns into a game and not like a blood fest, you know, for me personally.
Well, and honestly, it's like this is where like the NFL has kind of gotten a bit stale in how it does things.
Mm-hmm.
They had this great idea that they were going to add more games, and people are just kind of like, that's not really what we're after.
Right. I want to see talent. I want to see talent.
Right. I want to see talent. I want to see, you know, there were some great moments where the game kind of shifted in a weird and wild form.
Mm-hmm.
You look at what the 60s, 70s, and 80s looked like. Most of them, through the 60s and the 70s they were working regular day jobs.
Right. And it
In
was
the 80s,
more running, you know, in the
yeah,
50s and 60s. There was no passing for a long time, you know what I
right.
mean?
And then in the 80s you start to see, more of that, wow that the NFL became known for.
Mm-hmm.
You
Let's
know,
put the polish on it. Yeah.
you had your Lawrence Taylors, your Bo Jacksons, your Jim McMahons, and
Oh yeah.
you had a lot of great moments, but it was still somewhat raw, and I think one of the things that has definitely helped but also kind of hindered the way that the game plays is, there's been so much focus on replay, there's been so much focus on,
Mm-hmm.
making calls from a booth and things like that, and
Yeah.
it's definitely become kind of a weird way to watch the game.
Yeah.
But also too, then you start to see some of the other issues, like the off-field issues, and weird bans on things that don't make any sense. Like I'm sorry, but I still don't see the point of the weed testing. That's just
No.
not. I just don't see that as something that's necessary. Other than it's like don't play high. That's
We try not to, yeah.
it's just because that's anytime that you're going to potentially take away, your ability to focus really hard
Mm-hmm.
on the game, you're going to end up hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And so,
It's what's weird to me about that is I have my personal freedoms, but then when I suddenly am employed by the league to be 9 months out of the year, 5 days a week, that's a different story. And then when I go ahead and get sponsors, now suddenly my life isn't my own because that sponsor wants me to live up to an ideal that they want and not that I intended, you know? So a lot of it is just trying to be what other people want you to be. I think of like Ricky Williams and
mhm,
in a time when it wasn't like that. And I thought he was a great player, and it sucks that they like got rid of him just because of weed. And I don't think you should destroy somebody's life over that. Like in the off
mhm,
season, I think they should do whatever is legally within their rights. But it's a tough thing when
agreed,
somebody's paying you millions of dollars. You know what I mean? Like,
agreed.
he, so, but that's me. I think what really changed the landscape of football was fantasy football because now people were invested monetarily, you know, in a way like the average person, in a way where just the betting community was. And now
Mhm.
fantasy football put that up there. And now they're watching each individual player, each individual play, getting mad at like stupid calls. It's just taken the intensity up to a new level, you know? And then Colin Kaepernick kneeling, you know?
The politics in the game has definitely become something. I would say that it hasn't made it hard to watch, but it is definitely it has definitely been one of those places where it's like I respect the fact that they're using their venue,
Mhm.
as they can.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Heck yeah.
Absolutely. But it's not the kneeling that has taken away from the game. It's literally the fans losing their shit over it. And it just
Yeah.
makes it hard to want to watch the game knowing that somebody's just going to get butthurt about, some dude kneeling.
Right. Or worse yet, that the president is just going to be like, I'm butthurt. You should be too. Though it's just a game, you know. And now we lose like the national anthem, which was actually one of the things I told you I like about it, you know.
Hmm.
It was that the military presence, the taking time to honor these people at a time when everybody's watching. And
Hmm.
it helped drive recruitment that way, you know. And so
Yeah.
I liked that, but I also think like Muhammad Ali and oh man, one of my favorite running backs, and I can't think of his name. Fuck. You know, they did their off time stuff, and then
Hmm.
they actually boxed. I mean, Muhammad Ali said, "I'm not going to go to war," but he continued to perform and
Hmm.
advocate at the same time. I don't know, Colin Kaepernick. Like, I respect what he was saying, and I hope the conversation continues on police violence. You know, that's
Hmm.
something that we should all pick up in sports or out of sports. It's something we need to talk about. If if the league is 90, well, I don't know how much the fan base is black and white, but there's definitely a certain amount of white people there. And if you can get that message into their heads that it's happening, then it's worth having. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't disagree with that one bit, simply because, out of sight, out of mind, and
Mm-hmm.
putting it in someone's mind makes it easy to begin that conversation.
Yeah.
It's just that instead of addressing the issue like is so many times we've talked about, people want to bitch about the problem. Well, this is kind of one of those things where you know what the problem is and you got to do something to fix it. And
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think
so,
I think the people to fix it are the people that are breaking it. Like we just have to let them know stop at that moment. Like, yeah, you're
mhm.
frustrated. Try walking away. Try telling your partner, "Hey, I can't do this right this second. You know, let me be the backup." Something
But
needs to change. Something like
well,
cameras on everybody, you know,
I would
would
say
be nice.
something did change.
Yeah.
Something did change, and it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out because January 6th happened, and where you had all of
Mm,
this back the blue rhetoric for the last 5 years,
yeah.
we suddenly found out, well, that was a lie.
Hmm.
So now the question is what does protesting, what does kneeling in this season look like, after the events of January 6th? And
That's a
that to me
great
is
question.
that's going to be an interesting thing to see because you had all of these people sitting there talking about how, disrespecting our men and women in uniform and police officers and this, that, and the
Hmm.
other. And then they went and disrespected our men and women in uniform and police officers and our system of government
All
and
at once.
and it's like, so what was this really about to you? I mean, like, don't get me wrong, like I think that, when it comes to fucking with the Capitol, we have about 200 years worth of grievances that need to be aired, but trying to keep one guy in power, it
Right.
ain't one of them.
Putting Hitler in a cape doesn't make him Superman. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So I don't I what I think is history is a wave and it comes behind you. And we're gonna feel the repercussions of the Republicans not supporting the blue. I don't know, in a year, maybe 6 months, maybe it's gonna come, it's gonna happen. It's just never instantaneous like we
No,
think it is, you know?
no, and I mean, that's one of those things that I've seen like slowly start to fade as a number of people that, had their thin blue line stickers to them
Yeah,
starting to see them disappear a little bit.
right. And why? Because you stop backing the blue?
Hmm.
I don't quite understand. I mean,
I personally don't see any reason to show unwavering support to authority. That's just not how it should work. And
Right.
it doesn't matter what party it is. It doesn't matter if it's the military. It doesn't matter if it's police officers. Like
Hmm.
the idea is that these entities are there to serve the people, and by putting them up on a pedestal, you give some of those people this idea that they don't work for you.
Right.
And inherently I have a problem with that. like
Me too.
like all of these thin blue line stickers, I had a problem with them before January 6th, simply because well, I'm not exactly quote unquote a cab.
Right.
I'm certainly not somebody who thinks that I should just be bowing down to somebody who claims to have authority.
Right.
Like the reality is that my tax dollars pay your salary. You work for me, motherfucker.
Right. And
You know,
it's that thin blue line that keeps an atmosphere of silence. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
That's our issue is police aren't allowed to individually talk without their union coming down on them and the system coming down on them. And
Absolutely.
that's the thin blue line we have an issue with.
Absolutely. It's like I need cops to be able to I don't need cops fucking with me. Like
Mm-mm.
people, society needs police. I don't. And
Right.
that's the answer is that it's like it's not that I'm saying that I don't need a cop. Like there will probably be a time where I need a cop, but in terms of them being involved in my life, I don't need a cop.
Right.
Just like the person who is homeless on the street doesn't need a cop. He needs police in order to make
Hmm.
sure that, his rights are protected and that he is
Right.
safe. But does he need a cop fucking with him? No, he doesn't.
I think a police officer is a level head in a weird situation, and some people need that. I tend to be that, but I might need assistance in obtaining my goal of diffusing the situation, right? But
Right.
I don't ever think I need like a police officer to come in and make a determination, like in the situation. If I do, fuck, things went bad. you
Right.
know?
And I think that's one of those things where I really hope communities start to understand that it's like stop calling the cops for every little issue and disagreement that you have. Go
Yep.
talk to your neighbor if you have an issue. Go talk to your neighbor if there's a problem. See if you can't work out a solution.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Most people are willing to compromise individually and willing to
Agree.
sit down and go, okay, yeah, you know what, you're right. That's not fair to you, but I also want to be able to do some of the things that I want to do. So finding that compromise of how do you keep that peace?
Hmm.
Uh, you know, Not every situation calls for a cop.
No.
It's
It
and
just calls
it's
for communication. Every situation calls for
absolutely.
communication.
And right now, the cops are not necessarily trained for simple communication. They're trained to deal with
Yeah.
active threats more than anything. And it's
Yeah.
only been in recent history that they're starting to work on that de-escalation. And so, to be perfectly honest, most people in their daily lives have more work, more time in de-escalation than the cops do. So,
Yeah. What's interesting is what we always talk about, and that's bringing police back to the community.
mhm,
Well, and I think I don't know how it would happen, but jumping from point A to point B, we have a lot of servicemen and women coming home,
mhm,
and it would be nice if there was more community authority locally. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying they should be deputized or anything without being
mhm,
vetted, but I think there is an opportunity for more local enforcement with these people that are trained to diffuse situations.
oh, absolutely.
Not every, because there's a lot of soldiers that weren't trained that. There's a lot of
Right.
soldiers that were just trained to get a gun, go out, find the objective, and kill it. And that's not what we want. But there's a lot of people up and down in the ladder that have a lot of skills besides killing, you know.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's interesting. It's an interesting opportunity we have.
Well, and I know that we've talked about this, for example, with the whole issue of school shootings. I mean, like, you have a
Mm,
group of people who are going to be coming home that are used to active shooter situations.
right.
You
Mm.
know, you have, as much as I hate to say it, schools are going to be coming back, and unfortunately, you know what that means is also coming back.
COVID.
Well, that too.
School shooters, of course. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm in Florida, you know, we have both at the
both.
same time. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, Parkland was right before I moved here. And part of the reason why I moved here is because I wanted to develop a connection with some of those kids, and I never did. So that's a shame. But you're right. But what are we going to do about that? Are we going to make soldiers teachers now? Custodians? Principals?
I think, simply having that presence in the hallway, one of the things that they do here is, they'll have active police officers roam the hallways,
Yeah.
fully vested and everything, like in the mornings and all of that. And I'm like, that's one of those things that takes away from what I actually
Yeah.
need the police to be doing.
That's prison.
Right. Whereas, having a bunch of people who are, they're not cops, they're actually there to de-escalate situations, but
Yeah.
can respond if something goes completely haywire.
Mm-hmm.
Let the cops do their thing and do their work in trying to find, people who are actively committing harm in the community, but finding ways in which, members of the community are that are coming home are going to be able to continue to serve. Like there are more ways that we can do this, and
Mm-hmm.
we just have to be open to that. I mean,
Yeah.
I will say this in terms of our service members coming home. You know, New Orleans is, well, hopefully New Orleans doesn't get completely shelled by this hurricane, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not looking very good.
Before we transition, I want to say instead of getting 100 people to identify the problem, we might need to try and address the problem itself. Like, we
Hmm.
need to let that child that wants to kill people, wants to shoot, we want to let him find another avenue as well. It's a series
Hmm.
of choices that this person makes before they attempt, to kill multiple people in a school. And somewhere somebody has to see that, right? And we just need, like I said, we need more communication. We need less penalties maybe for people coming forward. I think that's a real problem, but we don't need to attack the problem, but we can also find a problem before it's a problem and talk. Just talk without
Well,
talking at them, talking around them, about better ways.
well, I think one of the biggest issues has just been, the fact has been parental involvement, and
Mm,
that's not because I wouldn't argue that it's not that the parents don't care. It's, the society that we live in
yeah.
currently, and it requires two working parents.
At two jobs sometimes,
Multiple jobs,
Right. It's not that they don't care, it's that they can't care. It's that the society said now you have to work this hard, but never built a safety net for their children.
hmm And so, it's when you're having to work multiple jobs, when you're having
Mhm.
when you're not having that daily involvement in your kids' lives. I mean, how else are you going to be able to see warning signs? I mean, yeah,
Exactly.
even just with my depression alone, like, my parents were busy, and
Mhm.
or not available in, physically, emotionally, whatever.
For sure. I was actually going to ask Jeffrey, I was going to just talk about the two of us in our teens between 10 and 20, because I was like, I wonder how that would go. But yeah, because I've been thinking a lot about kids. So I'm really sorry. I had the same thing. I was not diagnosed because I didn't have a parent around that cared.
Well, and where I grew up, it wasn't that I didn't have a parent that didn't care. It was just that, it wasn't something that was talked about or understood.
Rub
So,
some dirt in it.
it's one of those things where it's like, how do you expect someone to be able to understand
Hmm.
what depression looks like when and symptoms of it when you're not really familiar with what that is, and nobody's teaching it and nobody's talking about
Yeah, you don't even know it's a thing,
it.
right? You don't know
Right.
a hamburger's a hamburger until you actually see a hamburger.
I mean, my mom will tell you that I was arguably the smartest person in my house, and I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on with me. So, that's one of those things. It's like, how do you expect people to know what's going on when
Yeah.
nobody knows what to look for?
Come to think of it, yeah, my mom, when she did notice my depressions or my acting out, she actually pushed me more towards education. I didn't take it, but she pushed me more towards that way. She had me tested. I had an IQ 2 points under her. So she
Mhm.
thought she thought I was a genius. And she asked me, well, what do you want to do? And I said the smartest man would say, just stay happy. you know,
Right.
and then I've had a life full of a series of things that tested that. I don't know.
Hmm.
That's the way it goes, you know. If you want money and success, you're going to be tested that way too, because nothing
Hmm.
comes easy.
No, no, it doesn't.
Mm,
So I mean, like between 10 and 20, I mean, like at 10 years old, it was really, I was starting to struggle a little bit just because, like, dad's not around. He'd moved 500 miles away. You know, I've got a new baby sister. I've got my grandmother had just died.
mm,
I've got a new family dynamic. And we're still dirt poor. So it's, learning what my life actually looks like is going to look like. I've moved from, well, a relative city in eastern Montana standards to, a very, a rural farming community.
mm.
So I went from, I was reading The Hobbit when I was in second grade because I was in an advanced reading program to basically run dog run,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah,
and I lost my love of reading for a long time.
of course. Survival doesn't leave much time for anything else.
And then I was an outsider in this community. I wasn't born there. I didn't necessarily have quote unquote family there, even though, I
Hmm.
was married in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, it just shaped up for me to start to really struggle. And then of course, uh I got very overweight, and that was a source of being bullied.
Was that a protection thing?
I don't know, to be perfectly honest. I really don't know. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I would definitely say it was probably self-medication, simply because like
Okay.
food tastes good. I like food,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
You know,
know?
it's hard to be sad when you're eating a Twinkie, right?
Oh yeah. And grandma always had a fully stocked cookie jar, you know?
Right.
So so and of course that just ends up with me getting bullied up and down, I mean, I had high schoolers bullying me and I was a sixth grader. How fucked is that?
Yeah.
You know?
Bullying in and of itself is just a phenomenon I don't understand.
So it was weird. And, I had a teacher that, where things kind of started to change a little bit for me was, I had a teacher say, look, I don't condone it, but sometimes you just got to fight back.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, unfortunately, I wasn't very healthy in that regard. And I mean, I was just trying to fight everybody.
Okay.
So, by about 13, 13, 14, I'm, seeing a therapist because I've got some, pretty extensive anger issues at this point. I'm
Oh,
taking it out on everybody. But,
okay.
despite the fact that I'm working on the anger issues, there's still something underlying that I don't understand, and I just feel generally like crap the entire time.
Right.
You know,
Hmm.
like I just feel down and I don't understand why, but it's like whatever, I've got 1,000 things happening here.
Yeah.
So that probably explains it. But as I move into high school, I end up going through a growth spurt and I'm not fat anymore. I'm actually pretty skinny.
Fuck yeah.
And and I'm a straight A student. I'm involved in a whole bunch of sports and I'm involved in, a whole bunch of school activities where, I've got, pretty much every credential under the sun, my freshman and sophomore year. So I don't understand why I'm just miserable
Mm.
because I literally have so much going for me. The bullying has stopped
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
most part, but mostly because the once I got bigger, people realized that they couldn't just bully me so easily. So that
Right.
was a thing, and that's when it all just turns to hell. I've dealt with my mom having cancer, and now she's
Mm.
in night school, and my stepdad is just genuinely uninterested in being involved with us in any way, shape, or form. Um, but doesn't want me actively, doing anything with my sister. So it's constantly my kid sister, and
Mm.
so that's constantly a source of fighting.
Interesting.
And yeah, that's when things just end up taking a nosedive because I'm involved in everything. I don't know
Just to
what's wrong with
distract you
me.
from that feeling, right? You're
Yep.
just looking for any outlet. That's survival. Like
Yep.
you don't have opportunities like you do when you're comfortable, when you're in survival mode. You just
Right.
don't.
And then that's when I just bottomed out, you
Yeah.
know. And it took me a long, long, long time to start to really figure it out, and learn, what depression was and how it affects you, and
Hmm.
and
How
it
to
just
deal with it, right?
how to deal with it, how to, who to talk to, who not to talk to, how
Oh my
how
God,
to
yeah.
how to understand what you're feeling, and what you're going through, and learning a bunch of tools on how to either cope or figure out what your stressors are
Yeah.
going through therapists, multiple therapists, going through medications, multiple medications,
Mm.
and going through, what you think is the solution, only to find out months, even years later sometimes, that what you were on was actually terrible.
Right.
And it's only been since about 26 that, like, medication wise, I've gotten things figured out.
Cool.
And and then earlier this year I started doing therapy again, because I've got a lot of shit from my past that I didn't
Yeah.
really fully deal with, and I just got used to the it was one thing after another, moving in, trying to figure out, like, how are we going to feed a family,
Hmm.
well, we'll figure that out later. How are we going to handle, one parent's got to work, the other one's going to school, we've got kids that are going to be coming home, how are we going to handle that, and
But
just
that's a different kind of survival, isn't it?
it's a
Like that.
different kind of survival. I didn't have, like, my body chemistry. I didn't have my body chemistry fucking with me, and
Right.
but I wasn't doing the work to sit down and try and figure out what is going on and
Hmm.
coping with my feelings, because it wasn't the issues themselves. It was all of the things underlying that, I went through as a kid that was causing additional stressors that I hadn't dealt with.
Right. But I think about the difference is in one point we're controlled by somebody else's life, but once
Hmm.
we can decide our own life, like we're not extras in our parents' life, this is now our time.
Hmm.
It's a different kind of stress because you feel as if you're succeeding now when you
Hmm.
succeed, instead of succeeding and having your parent actually be the antithesis of that.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I mean, that's when you get to work on yourself instead of begging somebody to get a resource for you.
Right. But even still, one of the things that I have to keep in mind is that, you know, I have resources available to me thanks to, the job I work, number
Yeah.
one. And thanks to, the fact that I've got great support at home, number two.
Yeah, you do.
And and not everybody has that, even at my age.
Right.
And to me, that's fundamentally a problem.
Yep.
If you want a society to be mentally healthy, you have to have mental health widely available.
And you know what that would create? People, like you said something earlier. You said knowing who to talk to, but more importantly, who not to talk to.
Hmm.
And like, I think in this society, people bring a problem and others want to solve it just to get past the conversation. But having that conversation with a friend is what life is. And
Hmm.
we can all in a way be talk therapists, just to let somebody know that what's going on is real. Like it is real what you're going through, instead of
Hmm.
other people dismissing it as a problem, as a screw to
Absolutely.
be a nail to be pounded in. It isn't.
Hmm.
It's sometimes people just want to know, am I what I feeling is real? And
Hmm.
what the fuck? Like that's basically every question I have with people. But sitting down and talking to them is what's important. That's,
Hmm.
I think, the resource we need. We need to pick better friends.
So sometimes it's as simple as picking better friends, but
Yeah.
even those friends are going to sit down at some point and say, look, I appreciate what you're going through,
Hmm.
but I'm not the person to help you. You need to talk to somebody who's professionally capable of handling it.
Oh, yeah, awesome. That is awesome. That is perfect. I
So,
I was telling a friend, if you see somebody that's having a life crisis, You don't have to be the solution. And in fact, if you try to be the solution, oftentimes you get in the way of the solution. But you can always be there to help somebody and listen as the
Mhm.
solution comes along. You don't have to be, you can be support instead of diving into somebody else's problem. It's not your problem. You don't know how to solve it, but you can be there for your friend, you
Mhm.
know? So,
Absolutely.
and the self medicating thing, I think is, I want to know how many people in their teens self medicated with, and I want to know with what. I self medicated with drugs. I tried every
Mhm.
drug under the rainbow. I did acid for 2 years. I tried heroin, crystal meth, cocaine. I tried it all. I stuck with weed and I didn't, but I never picked up alcohol, which is weird. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
don't know.
and I think it just kind of for me it depended. You know,
Mm,
weed was great, but sometimes it was alcohol. I did a bunch of other things too. I tried
yeah.
heroin. I never did meth. Meth was one that I'd never wanted to do because
Yeah.
I had too many family members that did it, and I saw how they turned out.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Which, of course, big brain me going, yes, heroin seems to be a better solution. Yeah,
I'm
but
glad you didn't pick that up because wow.
yeah, and and so by the time I start getting on, actual medication for my issues, like
Hmm.
I quit doing the substances. Then until like I started having insomnia, and then it was just like I was
Man.
using substances to try and knock myself out because I couldn't sleep.
Mm, yeah.
So
Interesting.
that's when I did more drinking than anything, was because I wasn't sleeping, and I knew that if I drank enough, I'd end up passing out.
Interesting. Alcohol never did that to me. I mean, it is a very long process. It's a large amount of alcohol to get me to pass
Hmm.
out. And the stages
Same.
from sober to passed out aren't pretty.
Oh no, it
But
wasn't.
I'm a very friendly drunk, just so you know. But I'm very flirtatious. I'm very touchy feely. I'm very
Oh,
happy. You don't want that guy.
for me, every alcohol is different.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, good point.
vodka chills me out almost like weed does.
Mm,
Whiskey, for the longest time, would make me throw up. Um, Tequila is my Jekyll and Hyde.
mm.
Like, I either want to fight you or I want to take off my pants, and I have no
Right.
inclination what it's going to be before. So yeah, I like vodka because I know what vodka does to me, and I just get
Yeah,
really chill. But even now, I don't really drink all that much. I want to say a couple of weekends ago, I said fuck it and drank a half a bottle of sake. Didn't really do anything to me, but it
really.
was, yeah,
I thought it was stronger.
it's like 20%. So
Okay. That's
it really
strong
didn't.
enough.
It's strong enough, but it really didn't do anything to me. I was just having a little bit of fun, so it
Okay.
worked out.
There's a point
Yeah.
where I level off. If about 6 beers in, I'll level off and not be buzzed anymore. But then any more than that, and I'm taking off again.
See, I like to just have one beer. Like that's like I like to have one beer and I sip on it and I get a bunch of shit from plenty of people for my sipping on beers.
Do you leave them like a third left all over the place?
No, no, no. I'd finish my
No.
beers.
Okay.
But but for me it's just like I just enjoy sipping on it. Unless like I'm like fuck it, watch this, and then I'll just take a fucking pint and pound it like no other.
Oh man.
Yeah, one of my friends found out a few years ago when we did Oktoberfest at uh, their place of work. It was like, hey, do you want to see a magic trick? And they're like, yeah, sure. And I just like grabbed this beer and I went count it down and I went boom. And they were just like, holy shit.
I love that. So
So,
I have a question, a random question that just popped into
ooh,
my head. Uh,
random.
so I was on another podcast and this girl was like, she mentioned pop sodas. And I was like, pop sodas, yeah. And this guy said, what are you talking about? Like he didn't understand what pop soda was. And like that's all I've ever called it. Give me a pop soda. You know what I mean? And he started making fun of me because he said it was just soda. How do you guys say it in
Where,
Washington?
so where I grew up, it's a pop.
Okay, cool.
Um, you just called it a pop. I don't like calling it a pop. I like calling it a soda.
Okay.
Soda pop was also uh one way that we turn that I'd always say it
Right.
uh as a kid, a soda pop. But
Okay.
I typically say soda myself anymore, even though where I grew up it was definitely pop.
Okay. I think if you called it a soda, you might call it a soda pop just to cover all your bases. And I think if you called it a pop, you might call it a pop soda to cover all your bases. But to say like I put a clip up on TikTok and I was looking for a song, pop soda. There's like 20 of them. So
Mm,
it's not like it's not a thing, you know. So I
right.
just wondered. I wondered
It's
dialect
oh
how
oh
it is.
dialect is really interesting to me because there are so many things that there's so many words out there that the way that you enunciate them or pronounce them is really interesting. So like
Yeah.
what do you call a small river?
A creek?
Where I come from, we say it's a creek.
A crick is something that when you pop your back or
Mm,
you crack a knuckle, that's a
yep,
crick.
we
Ow,
call it a
ow.
creek. We say creek. We don't say creek.
Interesting. I love it. See?
Linguistics is really interesting. Or like the tiny little lobster looking things. They're about a
Claws?
yeah. What do you call them?
Claws?
Or what's another one that you call them?
Lobster claws? I don't
No,
know.
not the mini version of those lobsters that you find in rivers and streams.
Oh, crawfish.
hmm We called
Okay.
them crawdads
Crawd. I've called them crawdads too. Heck yeah.
or crayfish.
Crayfish. I've called it that too,
Yep.
depending on where I lived.
Oh, language is fascinating to me. Or
Yeah.
like when there are specific ways that you would pronounce something. Um, like let me see, what's another one? There's
It is
there's some really
interesting though. I listened to a
or
podcast called Way with Words. Sorry, I was just
oh yeah,
filling
yeah,
in.
yeah. Or for example, like do you know what a coolie is?
A coolie?
Yeah, Coulee, a coolie.
I think I heard it once in a Steven Seagal movie. Coolie, like a black guy.
Nope.
I know that's not what you're going for, but that's the closest thing I can come up with.
So a coulee is close to a creek, but it's usually dried out, and it's usually a bed that has a bunch of trees in it.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that's called a
I
coulee.
I call it a forest. I don't know what
See, now
to...
where I'm at, we don't really have a whole lot of trees, so where
I
I'm from.
got you.
But yeah, but the number of people who have heard what a coulee is, or
Hmm.
here's another good one. Do you know what a gully washer is?
I know what a gully is, but what's a gully washer?
A gully washer is when you get like a really heavy thunderstorm that ends up flooding out that gully, and you get a lot of water,
Oh,
or it's just a really heavy rainfall that is going to fill up your creek or coulee and wash
gotcha.
out wash out your gully. A gully washer.
And now we are transitioned back to Ida. How are you doing, New Orleans?
Woo, man. I have a friend that lives in New Orleans that just recently moved back, and she did the wise thing and packed up her animals and decided to get the hell out ahead of the
Smart.
storm. So I was going to look and see what that storm was looking like right now, because
Pretty bad.
last I think I saw is that winds were up to 150 miles an hour on that storm.
Yeah, they're predicting 155, but I mean, a category 5 is 157. Sorry, I'm on the panhandle right here.
Yeah, so right now winds are at 150 miles an hour.
Yeah,
It's slamming into the coast as a category 4. So
that's brutal.
yeah, New Orleans. Oh, that's another one. New Orleans
Yeah,
or New Orleans or Nolans, depending on how
anywhere
you
you live, like
or
Chicago. People go, what did you call it? Chicago? No,
or
Chicago.
that brand of baseball bat that's made in Kentucky.
I don't know baseball very well. Louisville Slugger?
Yeah, that's the brand. But if you're in Kentucky, it's Louisville. It's not
Right.
Louisville. It's
Nope.
Louisville.
I have a friend, Kai, from Louisville, and she says Louisville.
Yep. It's language to me is so fascinating in how
Uh-huh.
even just within our own country, the way that we pronounce certain things just is, it's really interesting to me and
Sure.
how that works.
And just
Uh,
think about things like Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, Florida. These are all in native words that we took, right? Like that's
mhm.
what's interesting to me. We are mispronouncing words automatically. You know what I mean? I wonder how an how an Indian would say Illinois. Sorry.
Yeah, how yeah, like how the Native American population would pronounce it,
Yeah.
or like
Could I
some of
get a
the
consensus on what to say? American Indian, indigenous person, like Indian. I don't want to say it wrong. I'm willing to, respect. I just don't know which word to use, and it catches me every time.
that's a really great I guess because my cousins I didn't say Indian because you know uh my cousins were Native American and Indians were from India.
Okay, I
It was
like
kind of
that.
because that's what settlers called them. They thought they had found India and they called them Indians and that not. So
Oh, I
like
like that.
even in master school, my Indian cohorts were confused by this because they're like, what? They're not Indian.
Right. And that
It's like
solves
I'm
the
Indian.
problem.
That's
That
not
solves
there.
the problem of what to call,
I mean,
people from India.
in Canada in Canada they call them First Peoples.
Okay.
I think that's a really great conversation to have with someone
Yeah, because
who
First Peoples kind of sounds like ass kissing to me. No offense.
it and yeah, I just
I like the indigenous people. I like using that. The indigenous, I don't like indigenous natives, but the first people are, I believe, from Africa, and that's what I believe. So there's a debate there on the first peoples
yeah,
thing.
where we all branched out from.
Yeah, right. So I don't want to get into that. No, so that's a great question, though. So do you think New Orleans should be New Orleans? Like, I can't help but think that in these coming catastrophes of this climate crisis that we are going to all have to huddle somewhere in the Dakotas to survive.
Well, I mean, that's the general issue of living next to the coast. I mean, everybody loves living next to a coast until you realize that water kind of does whatever it does,
Yeah.
with the tides and
Hmm.
earthquakes and
Sure.
giant storms. I mean, even like for example, with in Japan when you had that massive earthquake that caused,
Oh man, yeah.
that hit Sendai and absolutely obliterated,
Yeah.
the Fukushima plant. When the tsunami washed away, they ended up finding a bunch of old carvings, is stone carvings that had, old Japanese written on it that said, "Don't build your house below this because the ocean will take it away."
Wow.
So, it's to me like that fantastical idea of time is like, you know, Japanese history extends back like 5,000 years or something like that. And so the
Hmm.
question of, what history existed and has come and gone and lost, and then suddenly finding that, when did that, when did that get carved? Like what event
Yeah.
caused that?
Right. What event caused that? Pompeii?
Maybe.
Well, it has to be before Pompeii. I like that stuff. Like I told you, I watch Ancient Aliens for the ancient structures, not as much for the alien conspiracy theories. You know what I mean?
That's always that's like we've talked about before. The idea that people are more willing to believe that aliens have done something rather than, the fact that people
Yeah.
native to their culture were smart enough to figure out how to do something
Yeah. I
is
I think the origin comes from Heaven's Gate. There's a group of people that thought they could kill themselves, lose their bodily vessels, and end up on a alien ship headed towards Utopia. And
well, they were only half right.
I don't care. Keep trying. Keep so
You definitely could kill yourself and lose your bodily vessel, but the
yeah.
problem is
But I like seeing the structures, these huge structures. I didn't even know like these places existed. Like I don't know. I'm not going to go into all of them, but there's some pretty amazing buildings, and I think they're just, I don't know. I like the history of it. And a lot of, where was I going? Off the coast of India, there's like an entire city underwater, you know? And
Hmm.
it makes you wonder. I think we're the cause of the global warming, but I think it would have cycled somehow anyway. You know what I mean? I got
Oh,
way off of
absolutely.
where I wanted to be. New Orleans, do you think we should move it or fortify it?
Oh, obviously there's going to be a bunch of people that say fortify it because there is a lot of history with New Orleans. It's
Oh, yeah,
there, the fact of the matter is that, Louisiana is a really interesting case in that so much of the way that it is governed is still very much rooted in French and even in Napoleonic law, which is really
right.
interesting. Which that's fascinating to me that somehow in a modern United States that they're still using elements of Napoleonic law.
Interesting.
A an emperor who was deposed over 200 years ago.
Yeah.
When you think about it, that to me that's fascinating.
It is. I mean, Louisiana's so interesting. I haven't been there. You know what I mean? So I can't really say. All I know is from what I've learned on TV, but it's just a great mix of everything. I can't wait to go. I just wonder if at some point we're going to have to build it up. Like, if you want to keep it, are we going to have to raise the floor or are we going to continue to keep it like a bowl? Like, there's no way to stop a category 5 storm that's coming on your coast. You can't build a breaker wall for that, you know?
Right. I mean, and that's just it. Is like that storm is like looking at just some of the specifics of it really quickly. It's just wild how big that
Yeah,
thing is.
I know. I know.
And that's the thing is like, man, like looking at that picture, holy crap, it is huge. Like
Yep.
and that's the thing is like New Orleans is going to be on the eastern side of the storm,
Hmm.
which means that it's going to get battered.
Yeah.
It's going to get battered hard. Uh,
Right. And
Pensacola's seeing some of the outer bands.
yep. It's not
So
raining right now, but it was just 2 minutes ago. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I just,
So
and the other thing I wanted to quickly say about the hurricane is I've been trying to watch coverage for facts and like they're predicting beyond predicting. You know what I mean? And it's some of it is just fear tactics. Some of it is to acknowledge the precedence of it before it's precedent. You know what I mean?
mhm,
And I don't like it. It's helping for people to find protection, but it's
mhm.
also a bit of fear mongering for sensationalism. And I think it's a weird line to have to cross with a hurricane. You can state the facts, you can predict on models, but I don't think you have to say, I don't know, you don't have to use superlatives for it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So take care of yourself. If you're there, you should have taken care of yourself. That brings me to something else interesting because we're towards the end of the show and I didn't want to have to talk about it. Afghanistan, Afghanistan, Afghanistan,
Mm.
Afghanistan,
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. Why didn't people move out in May when they were told to? Why didn't people start leaving then?
Um, yeah, I'm gonna go with the administration had every ability to cut the red tape and begin the process.
Yeah,
And even Biden flat out said like, what we wanted to do was not cause a panic for mass evacuations.
sure, whatever.
So what they did was they waited until the last minute to cause a panic for mass evacuations.
Okay. I just they
Um,
I it's been said that they sent out emails as far back as February to warn people that it might be time to start leaving. And Joe Biden keeps having this line saying the people that are there don't want to leave. They don't want to leave yet. They didn't heed our warnings and they stayed too long. And now this is why that is. And I feel like he's blamed everybody except himself for the debacle of the departure, you know?
and there you go, and that's the honest answers is that what person really wants to leave their home, like,
Exactly.
but at the same time, like, what without seeing what they were communicating or the context or anything like that. There's a
Hmm.
difference between, hey, we're going to be leaving in a few months. You might want to think about whether or not you want to come with, to look, the
Yep.
reality is that the Taliban are going to take over. Here are the threats that are actively going to consume you. You need to do what's in your best interest, and this is your final boarding call, and that should
Right.
have been months ago.
Right. I feel like maybe there was warnings months ago. But I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to take anybody's side. I feel like
It's a
everybody,
clusterfuck, is what it is.
like, this happened, and then Democrats were like, what the fuck, Joe Biden? But then Republicans were like, what, look at what Joe Biden's doing. And Joe Biden was like, I'm not doing anything. And then the pundits were like, don't pick on Joe. We might lose everything. And I don't like that. Like, I'm not going to defend the departure. We should never be in that war. We shouldn't be in that war, and we're going to continue to offer humanitarian support along with the UN as it should be. We shouldn't be an occupying force in a foreign country. That being said, we should have had a longer term plan on removing people or giving them a way out. Although I believe the UN is in talks with the Taliban in creating a safe route out of the country once we leave. Uh, so people
Be
might not
interest
be. Yeah,
It'll be
it'll be
interesting to see what
interesting.
happens. But then here's what's been really fucking funny is watching a bunch of Republicans go, we need to take back Bagram Air Force Base. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
wait, so you want us out of the country, but you don't want us out of the country. What the fuck do you want then?
Right. They want, yeah, because these are the people that drafted the negotiations with the Taliban, right? Like Donald Trump's piece of paper, I assume didn't say, well, if you have to come back, come back. No, I think the Taliban said once you're gone, you're gone. Like don't reoccupy. And I think that was a shitty deal. And Republicans, I think they're mad at Donald Trump for being a poor policymaker and taking it out on Joe Biden.
Absolutely. And guess what? It's like we're leaving, period, end of story. Leaving does not include this idea of taking back an Air Force base. That's what the
Right.
fuck is, what are you even on?
But you can't ask the Taliban, hey, do you want us to? Do you want us to come back? Do you want us to be there? Do you want us to stay there? And as ISIS attacks them more and more, they might say yes, because it's in their interest to work with us because of all of their, apparently, like 85% of their economy is um, money that comes in from foreign aid. It's not like they generate an economy. It's pretty stale right now. And so they need our support in some way for financially, which upsets me because I don't believe we should be supporting them financially.
Nope. Nope.
No, no.
So, I mean, to me, it's one of those things where it's like, look, we made it clear, they made it clear they want us gone. We made it clear we're leaving. That means everything. I am I'm also equally pissed at the amount of equipment we're leaving behind because,
Yeah,
once again, this is going to be another one of those, well, our troops are, under equipped, and it's like, look, we left a bunch of fucking weapons,
yeah,
advanced weaponry over there.
right. And
Period. End of story.
if you think that the US grew the way it did from alien technology, just imagine what a bunch of terrorists are going to do with advanced technology that we left on their land.
It, I mean, the funny thing is that the very interesting argument is that we've left a bunch of fully automatic M4s with
Yeah,
night vision goggles in a foreign country,
yeah,
and those are things that we are refusing to allow our own citizens.
right.
So it's like, why is this equipment being left, especially when you know that you're going to have to do the requisition work in order to get more of that equipment manufactured.
Hmm.
The government waste at its finest is
Of
really what it boils
course.
down to. I'm not making the argument that your general everyday person should have a fully automatic machine gun. Um,
Not unless we all do.
in which case, we uh
That's so fun. And let's not forget that Afghanistan is everything now. So we can definitely confirm that Saudi Arabia isn't imprisoning women and torturing them. We can we can confirm that Iran isn't using their centrifuges to refine the materials used to create a nuclear bomb. We don't really have to worry about the atrocities in Syria anymore. It's like, where did all these things go? What happened to those Kurds that we abandoned? Like, it just seems like we're focused on what we are told to focus on. We don't have to remember any of that other stuff, but I think we really should.
Mhm. We
You know, we
should,
should
and
we should.
we should, and guess what? This is what our life is going to look like in the short term.
Yeah,
Is creating allies in the short term in order to use them for our own goals, and then dropping them off. Like we're just letting them go
hmm,
into the grocery store to get some candy, and then we're like, deuces,
right.
fucker, we're out.
Yeah, like they're a negotiating platform, like they're a chip to be negotiated with, not
Hmm.
something to be considered.
Yep.
Hey, thanks for being here, Jeffrey. Thank
Ah,
you for
yeah.
listening to Public Access America. Check out the live streams every Sunday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, and tune in Thursday for the conversation we are about to have right now. So I think what my thought was, and this is a selfish thought, and I want to parse it from other thoughts that I had. I'm seeing the government work so hard in Afghanistan. I'm working the news. I'm watching the news work so hard to cover Afghanistan. I'm seeing people across the country have an opinion about Afghanistan. And I'm thinking to myself selfishly, what if we could all unify all of that to focus on America?
Man, you really are selfish.
Right? Sorry about that. I've had other thoughts about humanitarian aid, and I think they should. Anybody that wants to leave a country they're oppressed in should have the right to leave and come here. I'm fine with that. Let's lose our southern border, but can we focus on America? Because there's shit going on right now, Jeffrey.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to touch base with you and ask you a couple questions, if it's okay, about just I have a question. What what's an issue that your kids are dealing with at a community level, at a neighborhood level, and then how do we address that within the community so that they don't have to deal with that and they can grow as people and become better than us?
Mm.
Mm,
That's a good one.
it is, and I didn't give you any foresight on that at all.
No, no. So I would say, like, in terms of what are some issues that my kids are having to deal with,
I
and
can I can while
how
you
would you deal
think
with that at
while you
a
think I
community
can tell
level?
you, Jay, he believes that it's not only education, but who's doing the educating and what they're talking about.
I mean, my kids have definitely seen that too, like even in what they learn at school. Like, for example, uh, my favorite example to go back to is my youngest, their history book um, it had this paragraph about how paragraph. When I
Hmm.
say this, I mean middle school paragraph about this relationship between settlers and a Native American community, and how when things weren't going quite the way that the settlers wanted it, they literally said soon there would be conflict. Like it was really hard for them to say, and then there was a genocide.
Interesting. So it's the
Uh,
words that they're using.
oh, and that's the thing is, like, they're wanting to, like, make some of this buttery smooth, like it's going to be somewhat easier to swallow the fact that we killed God knows how many Native Americans, and
Too
then
many.
use words like soon there would be conflict. I'm sorry, what?
Right. Felt
What?
like a little more than conflict to the Indians at the time.
Right. It's I'm pretty sure that conflict is not the word that should be used, but what do I know? Um, I would say that, yes, the education part of it is definitely huge. Like, and the who's doing the teaching. I think right now though, like, my kids are more worried about going back to school because
Okay.
they want to see their friends and they miss their friends and they miss that interpersonal interaction.
Right.
But at the same time, like, the hospitals are fucking full here, dude. And that's a pressure that they don't want to have on them.
Okay.
you
Like
know?
Mississippi has 20,000 children quarantined and 600, as of a couple days ago, 600 cases of children having COVID. So it is an issue, right? So is school, it's more of an immediate thing, right? We
Mhm.
can't even think long term until we get past this short term stuff.
Right, and that's the thing is like this short-term stuff like COVID has highlighted a bunch of other issues within the community.
Right.
Like how do we, like how do we make sure that kids are able to have meals because a lot of kids have been relying on the school lunch program and
Hmm.
expanded breakfast programs to get two of their three a day, you
Yeah.
know, and that's definitely been something that is, I would say, in terms of community, like how do you provide that in the middle of a pandemic,
Food
some
insecurity. I
you
love it.
know some school districts have been doing things like, they were like, well, we can't keep our bus drivers employed if they aren't picking up kids. Okay, well, what if they're dropping off meals? and
Right.
and some people were like surprised Pikachu face, like, this is a thing you can do. Why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be something that you could do where you could, have your kids, have your buses run the same route and then have kids come pick up breakfast and lunch,
Right.
you know?
There was a system in Texas during COVID where teachers were going to students individually to their houses.
Mhm.
And I can imagine just having a bus full of teachers going to the students might be interesting. You know what I mean? I like that.
You know, so being able to, understanding what community outreach looks like, even
Yeah.
in the middle of a pandemic, is, I think, I know that was something that some of, that my kids were worried about with some of their friends was, you know, are they going to get the help that they need, whatever that help may look like?
Right.
And so, unfortunately, we find ourselves in the middle of trying to solve immediate needs without thinking about long-term needs. And I think
Right.
long-term needs, for example, this is one that's come up in the news, the school lunch program, and how there's one school district in Wisconsin that has decided to roll back to the pre-pandemic lunch plan. Uh, but there's been reports that have come out that said that one of the school board members thought that uh, if kids got school lunches, they could become spoiled. Like,
Yeah.
uh, what?
School lunches spoiled me. That government cheese made me the man I am today.
Whoo-wee. Yeah. I'm gonna go with I've like, even just for us, like when our kids were on the school lunch program, like those things are not exactly filling or plentiful, or I mean, in some
Hmm.
cases good.
That's my point. We're fighting for school lunches. We're not fighting for the quality of what we already have.
And so, like, yikes, like some of the stuff that I saw them handing out, I mean, like, I was getting pissed at my kid for getting double lunches because it was costing us money. But then when I saw what they were getting as a single lunch, I was like, oh shit,
Hmm.
what? Like, this is, wait, hold on. This is what a
Right.
single looks like? No wonder you're getting double lunches.
Right. And welcome to the government's version of literally everything, including the future of Medicare for all. you're
I
gonna get
mean,
you're gonna get a lousy portion of a generic drug while everybody else gets the latest version, so
and it was just absolutely wild to me. And so it's not like in the last 5 years school lunch program has fundamentally changed, and that these kids are like walking through like a high-end sushi bar or anything like
right.
that. It's nothing like that. It's
Yeah.
like, it's grade D, suitable for prisons and dormitories.
Right. I think it was Trey Crowder I saw discuss this, and he was saying the same thing. Like, I got a square piece of pizza, It's not like I'm gonna get spoiled from that.
Well, and that's just even it is like the school lunch programs that we grew up on are even different than the school lunch programs that exist now, which is
Yes.
where people are sitting there thinking about, they kind of went all out with our school lunch programs a little bit
Hmm.
more than they do now. And looking
Agreed.
at what they do, look at what they get now, it's like, yeah, no, this is not great. And on top of that, as I've talked about with my kids here the last couple of days. It's like there's plenty of evidence out there that show that, kids who have access to, their meals, number one, uh,
Hmm.
they are usually more attentive in class and they do better in school. They have fewer behavioral issues
Yeah.
because, well, guess what? When you aren't fucking starving,
Yep.
turns out the brain can do great things. And as
Agreed.
somebody who grew up in that, can confirm.
Mm.
So in my mind, one of the things that we've required that kids go to school, right?
Yeah.
And to me,
Kind
as
of.
part of that, like in some states, like straight up, if your kids don't go to school, they will send cops to your house to make your kids either go to school, or they will like go through, I
Hmm.
forget what the process is called, where essentially it's like a delinquency process
Like
for
truancy. Yeah.
truancy. That's the word I was looking for.
Oh, cool. I finally got a word in, yeah,
Yep.
to help you. It's
Yep.
just what I'm saying is between homeschooling and charter schools and um, public
Which is
school,
which
there's a
is
variety
interesting.
of options. You know what I
Which is
mean?
interesting, which is interesting because as long as you enroll your kid in some type of school, like truancy doesn't apply. But if your kid is a public school kid,
Hmm.
like you literally can be forced to send your kid to school. Like, and that's one
Right.
of the things that I'm concerned about, at least right now, is that, if my kids didn't want to go to school because, there's a fucking pandemic raging and there's no hospital beds and they don't want to have that level of fear put on their lives, that
Correct.
somebody could literally show up and be like, hey, your kid's got to show up for class. And I'm like, in the middle of a pandemic, fuck you.
Right. The fact that your children have to have more common sense than our public officials is weird to me.
Well, but to go back to the whole school lunch thing, it's like I'm of the mindset of, if you're going to require kids be in attendance at classes, then it is incumbent upon you to make sure that they are going to be able to focus and do their schoolwork, and that includes providing breakfast and lunch.
That's just
Period.
a
End of
fact.
story.
If
Is
there's a
it
if there's a kid trying to get a lunch, just give it to him. Just
right?
I never had to pay for a lunch at my school. It was built in, I guess, because we just walked through the line and got the average lunch. Burrito one day, pizza the next day, fish sticks the next day. It was
Right.
crap, but it was there consistently, and I didn't have to pay or beg or ask for it.
And that's just it, is that I fully believe that, students that are going to be in school need to make sure that they're at least getting their meals. A lot
Hmm.
of and depending on the school districts, at least in here in Washington, they'd actually send food home on the weekends,
Yeah,
and in some cases, if I remember correctly, like if there were leftovers, they would box them up and send them home with some of the kids for dinner.
that's perfect.
So number one, you're reducing food waste. Number two,
Hmm.
you're making sure kids have something to eat.
Right.
Like, and it was weird because like at one point in time, like, when I had first moved up, we got asked if we wanted to get like the weekend meals sent to us, and
Wow.
we were like, we didn't realize it was like, no, we don't need that. We've got that covered. So make sure that gets to somebody who does need it.
Oh, I like that. That's the other thing. People have to be less selfish, just grabbing at whatever they can, like it's a food line, you know?
And so, and especially like, especially like right now, where most likely a lot of our food supply chains are going to be completely fucked because of international trade wars and this, that, and the other.
Right.
Great. If China doesn't want to import our apples, I can think of a school lunch program that would love to have fresh apples for their students,
Sure.
or
But
for their breakfasts.
what are we
You
going to
know,
do with all the chicken feet, though?
well,
China is the main importer of all of our chicken feet. Nobody ever thinks about the amount of chicken feet that our pets are going to have to eat because China isn't taking them anymore.
I mean, I'm sure Billy Bones wouldn't mind, but Billy Bones will literally eat anything.
Right.
So
Anything.
yeah,
But
she'll
and
she'll eat.
and then there's the other problem. We're offering children food, but at what point do restrictions come into play? Like special needs, the celiac, these people that can't have too much sugar. I mean, we can't give our kids too much sugar, but we can't give them not enough sugar. We have to give them something. We have to have a balance. What the hell? Is that something we address at our PTA meetings?
Well, I mean, like anything else, when it comes to, there's only so much that a person can reasonably expect. You know,
Hmm.
schools are not entirely gluten-free environments. That's just the reality.
Okay.
Unfortunately, like that's something that, what does equity look like in addressing that? That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, do you bring in sealed things that are, have definitely been processed in gluten-free environments? I think that's absolutely something
If you
that's,
can, yeah.
well, I don't even think it's an if you can. I think that it's, you can do it. The question is, what does that look like in terms of readily available? What does that look like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of school district to school district being willing to do it?
Exactly.
Willingness, I think, is more of the issue. And bottom line, again, I'm going to go back to, if you're going to require kids to be in school, then you need to have meals available to them, period. It doesn't matter if they're gluten free, if they have nut allergies,
Okay.
melon allergies. I don't give a shit. It's
Right.
like, what it
Kosher.
means is kosher, halal. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Okay.
Like, you need to have food readily available for growing minds to be able to do the things that you're requiring of them. Period. End of
For
story.
sure. I think school by school, community by community has to depend less on the federal basic standard and meet the needs of the kids in the school. And if you need a little more budget for that, it should be there. If you have to budget in special foods, then that's what you have to do in your community. I don't think the federal government should be, I don't think we should be dependent on a government standard for the basic, because I just don't think every community, we talk about that with everything. A
Hmm.
federal policy shouldn't address each community. It can't possibly. It's a
No.
generic average. And I think I want to be community wise. Community wise, I want to
Hmm.
address that in our communities instead of looking to big daddy government to solve all of these problems.
Hmm.
Maybe the federal government would have handled COVID and Afghanistan better if we were helping ourselves a little more in our communities, in our neighborhoods, on our blocks with our neighbors.
I don't know that that's necessarily the case, because you know.
I love how neutral you are. You will not bash the government when I give you a straight chance. And I
Oh, I'm
like
going to
that.
bash them. I just don't necessarily think that it's quite the way that you look. I mean, let's be realistic. This is president number 4 that's dealing with Afghanistan. You
Uh-huh.
know, and the fact of the matter is that, the quote unquote objective before was to kill bin Laden and
Hmm.
cut off, Al Qaeda's head. And then for the next 10 years, we were kind of like playing kick the can in Afghanistan.
Right. Nation
And it's like,
building.
what the that was never part of the objective. So,
Fighting for equality in Afghanistan, but, calling Black Lives protesters assholes for protesting.
yeah, and so what it boiled down to is that it became a great way for the government to pay a bunch of contractors to make new defense weapons for us, so that way we could have
Right.
us have a fucking sloppy exit.
Right. It was 20 years of Halliburton getting money to feed our troops.
Yeah, it's a fucking disaster is what it is. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it just is, it's absolutely fucking insane. I just,
Yeah.
the idea that the federal government was going to do this any better is just laughable, because
Hmm.
I was talking about this with another friend. When you look at what does war look like, when you think about what our quote unquote most successful wars have been versus what our least successful wars have been. A couple of the best examples, like number one, when you look at World War II, is very much deal with, a Japanese empire that was a threat, and deal with
Hmm.
a Nazi empire that was a threat.
Yep.
They had very clear goals: capitulation, period, end of story. And those two empires capitulated. And after that, yes, we had a presence in there, but we also invested really heavily in their economies for them to be able to, you know, rebuild
Yes.
themselves. But, in those regards, though, when you think about it, our investment in those economies weren't because we needed a stable Germany in order to, make sure that we didn't see the rise of National Socialism again. It was,
Right.
we needed a capitalist Germany to fight a communist threat.
That's right. And then that's how the wall got built, is because we supported and fundraised for Germany, and we created prosperity and assistance, and then
We dumped
Communism saw that,
money in there like
right.
nobody's business, and we
But
did the
Russia
same with
saw that
Japan.
as a threat. They saw that as an expansion of democracy, and that was a direct threat from an ally. And that's how the Cold War started.
And then we did the same thing with Japan. We dumped a lot of money in there to modernize and industrialize their economy
Yeah,
as a way of showing Russia that, look, we can prop up capitalism like nobody's business.
right.
Your Soviet Union evil empire is absolutely nothing compared to what we can do. But then when you look at, say, our failed wars that we have done, we went into Vietnam with the goal of stop communism.
Yep.
Okay, well, how do you do that?
Uh,
It
at
turns
the
out
tip of
bomb
the
the hell
spear.
out of them. It turns out bomb the hell out of them wasn't the answer.
No.
And we didn't do any sort of nation building like we did with Germany and Japan.
Right.
We didn't do the levels of investment in Vietnam like
Mm-mm.
like we did in post World War Germany and Japan. It wasn't even close.
Right. It was carpet
Essentially,
bombing them. Yeah.
it was carpet bombing. It was Agent Orange. It was napalm,
Yeah.
and
No
and
changing minds.
yeah, and throwing a bunch of arms at a group of people who were not seeing any relative improvements to their quality of life.
For sure.
And then we had one, I would argue, successful war, but once again, clear goal: get
Mm.
Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was very clear. It's like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. We had a coalition of multiple
Hmm.
Arab countries. It's like, this was very well defined. This was going to have a definite end. And once we hit that end, it was like, no, we're stopping. So
Right.
once we pushed the Iraqi forces back into Iraq, that was it. Game over. We're done.
I will say though, it's interesting and nobody talks about it. Saddam Hussein was an oil producer without a port. And
Mhm.
when Iran started blocking vessels that were carrying, Iraqi oil, Saddam decided he needed access to the coast. And that's why he was traveling through Kuwait along the Iranian line, was to just get a port so he could distribute his oil. And the United States sided with the oil rich Saudis and Iranians, to
Well,
help keep him from his port. Now
well, there
I
was also
understand.
there was
Yeah,
also the fact that Saddam thought that Kuwait was drilling under Iraqi soil and
right. And
stealing oil that way.
he was ethnically cleansing his country at the same time.
Oh yeah, no, like that's a whole fucking mess.
I mean, he wasn't a great dude. I'm saying his
Nope.
objective was obvious though, given the circumstances that were thrust upon him.
Right. So you end up with that. We actually have a very clear set of goals that are going to happen,
Hmm.
and then we're done, and that's it. But then we go into Iraq and Afghanistan 20 years later without clear goals.
Right. Well, goals, but goals of propping up a system to divert investment from America to the military in the region. Like they just wanted a budget. They wanted a military budget, an expanding military budget, and occupation provides the means for that.
The goal was stop terrorism. Okay, well, how do you do that? Well, it turns out, carpet bombings and precision guided munitions and,
Right.
accidentally, quote unquote, bombing schools and hospitals multiple times wasn't the way to do it.
Right. Nope. I don't.
And
Oh
when you
man.
finally did cut off the quote unquote head of the snake, then we decided that we needed to stick around for another 10 years.
Right. And make sure the snake died.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's that. And yes, there's the concern that ISIS is going to, gain itself a stronghold. And,
Hmm.
as we saw with the suicide bombing at the airport,
Man.
it's going to be a very real issue for Afghanistan in the near future.
Yeah.
Taliban turns out they hate ISIS, so
Hmm. Yep. But there's a Venn diagram of soldiers that worked with both or family members that have worked for one or the other. It's a complicated look, the Middle East is a fucking sand desert that we should have never gotten into. Britain never should have gotten in there. It's not our region, and it's not our place to say where the lines are drawn. I don't care. I don't care. ISIS wants to attack us because we're there. If we're not there, we have reason to attack them if they try and attack us. Like there was a bombing just today because it
Mhm.
was a drone strike that killed ISIS K Isaac bombers, right? Like
Mhm.
suicide bombers. And the explosion they're saying showed that there was explosives in the vehicle.
Yeah, it was a vehicle-borne explodes. It was going to be a vehicle-borne suicide attack.
Right, right.
It was huge. So, which hey, whatever.
You killed 13 of our servicemen, a Navy soldier and
Navy corpsman.
Marines. Right, Navy corpsman, a soldier, and like Marines. You need to pay for that. As soon as I saw that explosion, I was like, oh man, why didn't we just bury a nuke in that city and get out? You know?
It turns out that nukes are highly frowned upon by most societies, and I would agree with
Yeah.
it.
I know, but the CIA does worse stuff in South America. Just plant
Yeah,
a
but I
big
don't.
nuke there and say, "Oh my God, their nuclear program went awry. We didn't even know. We didn't tell anybody. Oops."
Yeah, but I hate to say it, but they're gonna figure out real quick what a W-88 nuclear warhead looks like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got you.
I
I,
mean, nuking, bad idea. Period.
I
End of story. But we do have the Moab, so we can at least make it look huge.
bigger and bigger bombs that don't have a nuclear payload is amazing.
Literally like dropping a fucking Greyhound bus.
Right, exactly. And somebody was just like, well, I don't know. Here's my bright idea. Let's make it a little bigger.
Meanwhile, it's a fucking Greyhound bus, and they
Yeah,
put precision munition steering on it. I'm like,
right.
precision munition steering on a fucking Greyhound bus. This sounds it's like speed except for, terminal velocity to hit the ground.
Right. Well, Jeffrey, I got a great idea. Let's make a bomb as big as a blue whale. I mean,
I wonder if a, I wonder
it's
if a
not advanced
Hercules could
thinking.
lift that. I wonder if a Hercules could lift that.
Well, we'll just build a bigger plane to contain it. I mean,
Oh
that's not
God.
advanced thinking, is it? It's progressive thinking. Like, let's build a bomb. Let's build a hydrogen bomb. Let's build a bigger hydrogen bomb. Like, at some point, you just have to realize bigger isn't always better. Maybe
No.
inventing a new solution. A bigger motor isn't as good as maybe a smaller electrical motor. Hey, or fusion. You
I
know.
mean, when you think about it, it's like even at the height of the Korean War, like we had a commander get relieved because they were dead set on wanting to nuke the North Koreans. So it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, yikes.
We covered that. And during the nuclear age, there was a group of people that were making nuclear rifles, like nuclear bullets, and nuclear hand grenades with smaller capacities. But they soon realized that not only would it kill everybody on the other side, but it would kill the guy that threw it too.
Right. Like they had that fucking Davy Crockett launcher, and it's just like that's a terrible decision. Like, who the fuck thought this was great? Oh, but it's tactical. Yeah, so you're tactically going to remove your own troops. That sounds like a fucking brilliant plan. Hey, y'all, I got this great idea. Wait, isn't that going to kill us? Look, you're
Maybe.
deploying on.
There's going to be some casualties. Yeah. That was the Cold War. We assumed casualties. Casualties were built in. They were a benefit, not a, not a negative. They were a positive, not a negative.
Hmm.
That's so funny.
So
War is so
dumb.
funny to me. War is just so funny to me. Like, I don't know. I don't know why we're in the Middle East. I don't know why anybody ever was. And I've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out if Palestine was the asshole or if Israel was the asshole. And it turns out you can
Britain was the
remove,
asshole.
right. Well, not only that, but like I don't know how to explain it. Like they put Israel in there and Palestine was like, oh, okay, we're going to start fighting them. But then Jordan came in and Egypt came in and we're like, we're going to take care of it before Palestine does. And then they dramatically lost in 6 days. Like, Syria taken, Israel took it, Jordan took it, Egypt, they took it. They took all the land in a war that Palestine wasn't allowed to be involved in. And so I don't know. I don't know who the asshole is, but it isn't Palestine. And I'm pretty sure it could be Egypt.
There's the thing about history is that the longer you look at it, the more assholes you find.
Right. But what I'm trying to figure out is like occupation is one thing, moving people in is one thing. But like when a country fights for land and wins it, that's a different precedent. Like that's theirs now, and that's what kind of sucks is that everybody was fighting Israel for Palestine's land and they lost to Israel, and it's like
Mm,
Palestine lost their land, but they didn't have a chance to fight for it. And so
right.
I feel really bad for the Palestinians, but I feel really all right with Israel winning in that war. Now, what they did afterwards, ethnic cleansing of the land around them so they could expand, I think that's an atrocity we need to talk about. And so
Oh,
after the 6 Day War, what Israel did to the Palestinians is an atrocity. And that I don't like at all. You know what I mean?
you think about the number of wars that were fought over that. I mean, you had
Yes.
you had the 47-48 Arab-Israeli War, you had the
Hmm.
6 Day War, you had the Yom Kippur War.
Right.
I mean, yeesh,
There was just a battle a few months ago. You know what I mean?
I think there's one still right now. I think
Yeah.
that's ramped back up again.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, but my issue is Palestinians have never had the right to live on their own land because somebody gave that land that they were living on to Israel. And I want to say Israel has been, through my estimations and research, pretty focused on just winning the battles and the wars, but not thinking about the people that it's hurting. Israel never in they never really went, should we do this? They went, we have to do this for our own survival. And what I'm thinking is there's a flaw in the thinking with Israel, and I'm not quite sure, but this is where I'm headed next. Israel is fighting for their homeland. I don't believe that where they are is their homeland. I believe their homeland is closer to Ethiopia. I think they're occupying the wrong land because I don't know where Egypt got their slaves from, but I'm pretty sure it isn't from where Israel is now. I'm pretty sure it was from Ethiopia. So that's where I'm working on.
I mean, there's a lot of that's a tough one.
I
Like,
know.
I don't
I
know
know.
a whole lot about further back history and maps.
Yeah,
So
I
I think
got
I
you.
think I think that's definitely something for history experts and scholars to discuss there.
Definitely.
Because
Definitely.
unfortunately I just don't know. Like all I can say is know what I've seen in the Bible, but I can only speculate that how accurate that is. So,
That's what I'm saying. At some point, it's moot because the Bible isn't an accurate history. It's more of a fable-based history.
yep.
Man, okay. So racist Florida man attacks at somebody at an airport in Miami. I have to get these Florida man things in because Florida men are butt fuck crazy.
I mean,
I don't have
it,
much information on it other than he was trying to box an employee without wearing a mask at the airport. I
yeah,
saw
I
that.
saw that one.
Yeah, okay, good. There's a
Oof.
video, but I didn't get to watch the video. I just saw
I've not
racist
watched.
Florida man.
I haven't watched it either. So it
Okay.
just it's absolutely spectacular. But
Yeah.
I
You know,
guess what do that dude is unfortunately going to find himself on a federal travel ban list for the rest of his life, and
yeah,
even depending on how your how your state metro system works, he might not even be able to use that anymore.
that's good. That's good. We
So
just need to stop being racist. Hey, another story from a racist Florida man, as we often do these ways. Donald Trump earned almost $2.4 billion in his 4 years in office. And I don't have much of the Venn diagram or the pie chart of Venn diagram, the pie chart of what he got it in, but most of it was acquisitions, hotels, and branding, you
oh,
know.
that doesn't surprise me.
Right. But then it dropped in 2020. He was in 2019, 2017, 2018. He was earning 6.4 million a year, and then it dropped to 48 when COVID hit. So that might explain some of his actions in trying to control, a pandemic.
Yeah. Turns out when you suck at dealing with active threats to your community, you don't make any money. So,
Right. When all you do is think about money, you don't really think about the community threats.
right.
Hmm. Why do people keep electing rich people into office? I'm thinking,
Because they have the money to run, period, end of story.
gotcha.
Like what time, like how much time does your average person who's working a job or two have to run a campaign?
Right.
Like you still have to put food on the table at home.
Hmm.
You still have to make sure that your family's needs are taken care of. So the idea that you can just fuck off from your job and lose your benefits and
Mm.
uh run a campaign is kind of a shit show. You can't do it. I mean,
Mm.
that's why unless you're getting sponsors or donations,
Hmm.
like it just isn't possible to do. Like the idea, like, so for example, if I were just to decide, you know what, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to run for politics, like that's really going to fuck with my family's ability to do anything, whether it be make house payments, make sure that my kids have the items that they need to go to school, or make sure that we got food in the cupboards. Like I can't just drop what I'm doing to become a politician. That's just not how it works. However, when you have, fuck you money, it's pretty easy for you just to decide that, you know what, I can just not do anything and I'm going to run a political campaign for myself to get elected because I don't need to have a job that makes ends meet. So, realistically speaking, that's why rich people keep getting elected. They have the ability to do it. If I were to magically become rich, the likelihood, I wouldn't say the likelihood, the ability for me to become a politician would be a lot easier because I don't have to worry about how much time I have. My time would be spent focused on running a campaign, not, okay, now I've put in my 8 hours. I'm going to make, I'm able to make sure that my kids are going to have, food in the pantry. So now I'm going to try and run. That's really just all it is.
Okay. It's the people that are front and center that can do it, are doing it.
Yeah, they can do it. And basically, like we've talked about before, until somebody can figure out how to use the power of social media to
Hmm.
run a campaign in their off time. But even still, unless the office that they end up taking pays, number one, more than what they're making currently, provides better family benefits,
Mm.
it still doesn't make sense. So like even like being involved at a community level, like for example, there was a couple of positions that were open here that at some point maybe I'll consider running for,
Hmm.
but they only pay so much. They're like
Yeah.
$25,000 a year positions, and there are people out there that are running for these things and they've got the money to do it, and I'm like, I don't.
Yeah. Tallahassee's soil and water commissioner is a volunteer. Um,
Hmm.
you get elected, but you volunteer to run.
Hmm. So makes it difficult to be able to run that and to do that kind of stuff. So
Right. And have a life. So it seems like in 2 hours, the solution to everything we talked about was 25 by 25, a living wage.
mhm.
It's a shame. That would change a
So,
lot of lives.
well, I mean, living wage would always change lives,
Hmm.
or finding mechanisms in which you can better support your community.
Right. You know, I heard a story and I didn't get a chance to investigate it yet, but Joe Biden apparently wants to eliminate student loans for anybody facing a severe disability.
Yep, that
Isn't that
one I
cool?
that one I did hear.
And the disability community says, oh shit, people are going to hate us more.
What, living on your fucking Medicaid or Medicare
Yeah.
that barely covers anything?
People think that's what somebody quote people think we get things for free, and now that we're going to get something for free, they're going to be mad that we got something for free because they think we get something for free.
When the reality is that, what they're doing is they're forgiving student loans on people who can no
Can't,
longer work,
then can't,
period.
will not be able to pay it back.
Right.
Right.
So it's like, so rather than sit there and penalize people for not being able to work because of, well, the fact that they've become disabled,
Right.
yeah, it's just not going to happen. Like
In
it's
a
just
pandemic that they had no control over.
right. So yeah,
Yeah.
that is true. That's what they're looking at doing,
Yeah.
and
I think
it's
it's
one of those.
cool. I think
I,
it's going to free money up for disabled people to become entrepreneurs and hire disabled people. So I think this is the beginning of a long-term amazing arc that I want to watch.
that's my hope is that
Yeah.
that's what it would do.
Yeah.
But honestly, like I would also make the argument if that is something that is successful for people who are blind, I
Hmm.
would make the argument that it'll be successful for anybody who has a student loan.
Yes. Yes. I don't, from the disabled people I talk to, there's two camps that I'm feeling sorry for myself or I'm going to prove that I can do it. So
Hmm.
I think people that are seeking education that are disabled, they're trying to overcome something that's really, really insurmountable and they're doing it. And those people can go on to do a lot. And so
My
I'm
pause for
excited about that.
concern though is that, the way that I read it was is that they were excusing the student loans for people who were at the point of disability where they couldn't work.
Right, right.
So
Exactly. With severe, they added the word severe disability.
so my concern is that, if people are shown that they are able to work or able to do something that
Hmm.
it's going to disqualify them from being able to get that.
Oh,
So you're
okay.
you're basically you're basically just putting enough out there so that way it's like, yeah, these people can't work, they're not going to be able to do anything,
Hmm.
so we're just going to forgive that, because what are we going to do, keep having them bill out for something that they'll never be able to pay back? Whereas people with
Right.
disabilities who obviously have found a mechanism to be able to work and do something aren't going to qualify for it.
Interesting. So it's just
That's
relieving a stressor because there's already another stressor on the people. We're going to forgive the student loan debt because we already have you in another cycle of poverty. We don't want to have you in two. We're going to take one away.
that's basically how I read into it.
Okay. That's sad. That's pathetic. That's our government.
Yeah, and so
Maybe we should stop relying on our government to do these things for us.
bingo.
I'm all in favor of protecting my borders. I just, like I said, you spent a lot of money in Afghanistan. If you had spent it here instead of being there, we would have been better off, I think.
Well, and to me, like if we had spent the money on relieving the student loan debt for everybody, you would find that there would be a lot more entrepreneurism. You'd find that there'd
Yeah.
be a lot more small business
Yeah.
ownership. You would find that there would be a lot less debt in terms of credit cards, and you
Uh-huh.
would you would find that you would actually be spending more money in the economy instead of more money into banks that are, literally, not providing the level of growth that they
Right.
could be. Whereas, if I had the money that I was, paying in student loans and credit card debt, freed up, I could be eating at different places. I could be going to different places. I could be buying different goods
Mm-hmm.
and services. I could be paying somebody to come in and clean my house once a week, twice, once,
Yeah,
things like that. But I can't do that.
you
I don't have
can't.
that ability.
But we think about reparations and how to make people whole from them living in a system of oppression. You could almost see that with student loans. The fact that there was predatory a predatory system put in place to make sure people were in debt for as long as they possibly could be. If you looked at it as a legal thing, you might be able to fight that, you know?
And that's the tough part is that you have to make the argument that the loans were made in bad faith.
Hmm.
And the reality there is that what was the government expecting in terms of what they were going to get back from it? Because a lot
Hmm.
of this is supposedly that they're putting this money back into student loans, supposedly.
Right, right, right.
but it's remained to be seen.
Like grants and
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Right. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult to prove that that's actually what's happening.
Yeah.
Whereas, there are other mechanisms that you could have done with this easily, or for example, like expanding what civil service looks like, and
Mm-hmm.
how you pay back.
Yes.
Because I technically work for a nonprofit,
Okay.
but apparently I don't work for the right nonprofit.
You work for us, buddy. You work with us.
I don't work for the government, but I work for an agency that benefits the government. I
Okay.
don't I work for, you know, I work I technically work for what was it? Like what I do is technically a community service, but it's not enough of a community service.
Okay.
It's fucking weird. Like basically what I do meets all of the qualifications but doesn't meet all of the qualifications because
Yeah.
they you know because unless our organization was filed as one specific 501c3,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't count,
Right.
even though like every single thing that I do technically qualifies under everything else.
I gotcha.
It's
That's
just it's it's weird is what it boils down to. Because could I make more money doing what I do somewhere else? Absolutely. But I don't want to do it somewhere else. I'd rather do what I do and benefit my community.
I like that. We're gonna have a talk about starting a 503C.
501c3.
50 I don't know, 50.
501c3,
Okay. Yeah.
nonprofit organization. So
I love it.
501c is a nonprofit organization, but then there are different subchapters.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of different ones. 501c3 is the most common, basically, able to do a lot of different community service, apply
Right.
for
It allows
grants.
you to collect donations and
Yep.
distribute them and all that stuff. That's
Yep.
eventually within 5 years, I would like to be there, public access to be there. So
Right. And that would be fantastic to be able to figure out what that looks like.
yeah, I still don't know. People keep saying, you want to start a charity? What do you want to donate to? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, there's so many problems. There's so many issues. I don't know. But that's for the group of people to come up with once I create the 503, So
Yeah. So
513. Sorry.
yeah, so it's definitely one of those things where it's like, yeah, there will be a time and a
Mm-hmm.
place to figure it out. But there's also so many different nonprofit organizations out there, and
Yeah.
and they're classified in different chapters, and they do
Mm-hmm.
great things. It's just that, for whatever reason, uh, they've decided to uh, they've decided to put them into a different realm. Like, for example, credit unions are 501c corporations. It's just that they're a 501c14, if I remember
Wow.
correctly. Because literally, 501c, like a credit union, the only people that you are beholden to are the people that work for the credit union and the people who put their money in the credit union. We don't
Right.
have investors to answer to, nothing like that. Our goal is literally to work for the community, period, end of story.
Right.
So why is it that doing that level of community work and supplying that level of banking function to people, for people who normally that's out of their reach,
Mm-hmm.
why is that not okay in terms of community service or something like that?
Right.
Because essentially what you're doing at a credit union level is you're providing a level of service that, number one, rivals banks. Number two, is meant to help affected communities, and by applying that leverage of taking what the community is willing to invest and reinvest that in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas banks are pretty good at taking what the community wants to invest and paying it out in bonuses and
Mm-hmm.
holiday parties that have strippers and coke.
Right. I mean,
I
it's
mean, I'm
after.
I'm I'm pro strippers and coke, just not with giant CEO bonuses. You
Yeah,
can
I
buy
don't
your
want
own
to. I don't.
buy
I
your
don't
own
want to.
strippers and coke.
I don't want to invest my money and have them take the dividends for hookers and coke for them.
Right?
Right. They should be
So
community hookers and cocaine.
our hookers and cocaine.
Yeah, or hookers and cocaine. Wow.
Well, I mean, and so what it boils down to is that, you know by expanding what that looks like, I think that
Hmm.
you could easily build more value into community service and and serving the greater good, like there is no reason why what I am doing shouldn't be a part of that student loan forgiveness program.
Right.
Because I could quite easily go do what I do for the government or a private entity. It's just that what I've chosen to do, I've chosen to do at the place that I do it at, simply because I want to make sure that, number one, the community is being served and that they're
Yes.
safe in doing what they're doing with us. So
Yep. Yeah, that should be our message for this week. Community involvement trumps national grievance.
national grievance and national greed.
Yeah. I think we're just focused on the air up there, but we should be looking at the grass down here, you know what I mean? And if
And that's the
if
thing is that it's so easy to build a community level involvement that
uh
either number one, can expand into other communities, or number two, that literally, you could have someone come up to you and say, hey, I want to start this in my community. Do you got any
yeah,
pointers? And you can literally be like, here's all of the charters and paperwork on how we do what we do. Take it and go do it in your own community. Let's do this.
exactly. Maybe that's what it should be. Maybe public access should teach people how to create their own.
How to create your own community movements.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we need
Meet
that.
community necessities, absolutely, and have it just be a knowledge network.
Right. When you see garbage on the side of your road in your own community, you don't look for the federal government to bring a garbage truck. You
Right.
need to address that. So I like that. I like that. I don't know why this question popped into my head, but we're towards the end, so I'll ask it anyway. What's your favorite Smurf?
My favorite Smurf. um
Yeah,
well, as I'm getting older, I'm definitely becoming Papa Smurf.
there you go. He's the only one I remember.
Well, that and Smurfette, which as I've
Oh
gotten
yeah.
older, Smurfette both concerns and confuses me,
Okay.
because there's
So
only one Smurfette.
there is only one Smurfette and a
And then
lot
you're
of
like,
Smurfs.
oh no.
Hmm. I have nowhere to go. I'm not a Smurf fan. I used to watch them back in the day.
I never really I mean, I saw an episode or two, was never really my thing.
Okay.
I
So
liked
fuck the
I
Smurfs.
liked I liked Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was
There
my
you
thing.
go. Okay.
Saturday morning cartoons, jumping up early to, I mean, I used to get up so early so that way I wouldn't miss Saturday morning cartoons, that I would accidentally get up when the station was still doing like its sign-ons and,
Uh-huh.
broadcasting the whole
National anthem.
national anthem and the
Yeah.
flyovers, America the Beautiful, and this, that, and the other.
Mm.
And then it would be like 2 hours until Saturday morning cartoons, and that's when I'm like, oh, I fucked up.
My Saturday morning cartoons were the Hulk Hogan show.
Mm.
I don't know, just a bunch of wrestlers cartoon, Lou Albano and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and all those guys, good versus evil in a cartoon sort of thing.
The
Man, Hulk
Iron
Hogan got
Sheik and
around. Yeah.
oh my God. Yeah.
That was one of those things. You know what I noticed being older? I've seen the rise and fall of athletes. And that's so interesting to me. I mean, Tom Brady's whole career fits in half of my lifetime, you know?
Hmm.
That's amazing to me. That's just so weird.
It's wild.
When I was a kid, I would see athletes and I would be like, they're amazing. That's who they are. They're a role model. Mean Joe Green, what the hell? And now it's just like, you remember Odell Beckham? Odell Beckham,
Hmm.
or I don't even know some of the guys that used to be.
Yeah. Like Odell Beckham was going to be something spectacular, and that didn't
Hmm.
happen. And
Right?
I mean, he's made some amazing plays, but hasn't been on any Super Bowl teams.
No. And what
Um,
about Jimmy Graham? Like Jimmy Graham, now he's a Bear, but he was a Seahawk.
and he was a Saint, and he
Yeah.
was, and he was, and he was, and he was.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Um, no, like it's absolutely wild. Some of the things that for example, like, I remember when Cam Newton came onto the scene, and I was like, oh my God, yes,
Yeah.
the Panthers are going to have an awesome quarterback. And then we finally went to a Super Bowl many, 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 many years later, and
Hmm.
got absolutely trounced.
It was a good team though. It was a
It
good
was.
team. Greg Olson, fucking Cam
I
Newton.
I I still think that like I'm like I liked the 2003 Panthers. They had Jake Delhomme as quarterback, and I mean they were just weird
Ah,
and scrappy.
right,
Julius
right.
Peppers was on that team,
One of my favorite all-time players, by the way.
so no, that was a good one.
Mm,
They didn't win that one either, but it was they went up against the Patriots and they lost to a field goal kick. So
right.
whereas the Panthers just got straight up beaten.
And now Cam Newton's a Patriot. How cool is that?
It's not. I don't like the Patriots. Although it was like, for me, it was kind of one of those things where I was like, I'm gonna laugh if Tom Brady goes to the Buccaneers
Hmm.
and he's just awful, but I was also gonna laugh if Tom Brady goes to the Buccaneers and wins a Super Bowl.
Right,
It was gonna be like, what, if even if he just was like a mediocre quarterback for the Buccaneers,
right.
but the fact that they went in there and then his first year there they go and they win a Super Bowl, and I'm like, you know what? Okay, fine.
Right. It's amazing how a quarterback with accuracy can win you a Super Bowl when you have all of the other parts.
Well, it's not even just that. Yeah, I mean, you like having a quarterback with accuracy, but also having a line that protects said quarterback.
That's what I'm saying. Even they
You
had it,
know,
but Jameis Winston held on to the ball way too long and threw it like wide. He wasn't a great quarterback, although people thought he was because he had an arm. He just had no accuracy or no sense of timing. So all you needed was a quarterback that could deliver the ball to the right people. And didn't they get Antonio Brown too?
yep, they
Like
got Antonio Brown
Mike
and
Evans and
Gronk
Antonio Brown
and
and
Gronk.
Gronk. What else would you want? Like you're
Like they
not going
had
to
a ton of
win.
weapons. They
Yeah.
had a ton of weapons, and that won them a Super Bowl.
Right. And you notice that I live in Florida. Tom Brady moved to Tampa Bay, and I'm still a Bears fan. 'Cause I don't jump on bandwagons like that. And I have a Tampa Bay jersey, you know. So it's not like I don't have them. I have a Jacksonville jersey too. I don't know what's going on with that team. I don't want to be near that. I'd rather be a Bears
Mm.
fan than any Florida team fan, just so you know.
Well, at least Jacksonville doesn't have Tebow anymore.
Right? They got rid of Minshew too. Like I looked and they like their quarterback of the future last year is not even a quarterback anymore. You
Yep.
know, and Mitch Trubisky's on Buffalo as a backup. Like, what did I miss this last 2 years? You know what I mean? Fuck.
Yeah, I mean, I just haven't watched football in a long time,
Me
really.
neither. Thanks to
It's just
Donald
not the
Trump.
same. It's just not the same, so that's all right.
I
I
didn't
got I
like the
got better things
political.
to do. I got better things to do on my Sundays.
Okay. Yeah, you do. And you're gonna go do them right now.
And I am.
But you give Debbie a hug first because I miss them so much.
Oh, I could go over there and give Debbie a hug for you. I'm sure they'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
Or
Uh,
they might just stare at me and be like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
well, yeah, I only hear half the conversation. For everybody to know, I am putting some episodes that I liked on YouTube as Red Circle spotlights. It's a playlist, and the next one to go up is the conversational introverts that I did with Debbie. So that's exciting.
Fantastic. That'll
Check
be a
that
good
out.
one.
It's a good episode, and I always want them back to talk, you know. But I understand. I was thinking about it. What I do often is ask people to open up about things that I force them to have an opinion. And
Hmm.
sometimes I might bring up topics that they don't necessarily want to be on the record as having an opinion on.
Well, and I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind as we have conversations is that what we're trying to do is foster conversation and foster growth. The
Mhm.
idea isn't that we want somebody to just, here's the hill that I'm dying on. Let's start the conversation that actually goes somewhere, that actually changes things.
Yeah.
Because being dead set in your opinions doesn't lead to change. Being able to learn and grow and move forward with community solutions is what gets us to change.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I think I'm just going to leave it right there.
All right.
That was amazing. Yay. There you go. I love it. Thank you for being here, Jeffrey.
Absolutely.